name is Thais Selassie. I'm a novelist based in Lisbon, Portugal. And the COVID-19 pandemic, for me, has served as an invitation to imagine the world without racism. The peak of the pandemic thus far in Portugal coincided with the gathering of strength of the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States and abroad, meaning that I spent most of the summer marching alongside hundreds of others here in Lisbon and hundreds of thousands the world over, protesting, demanding the demise of the thought structure, of the economic hierarchy, of the social ill known as racism. To imagine the world without racism, we must first imagine the world without race, which isn't hard because race is, of course, imaginary. The idea that my melanin content, which results in my beautiful brown skin, of which I am terribly proud, the fiction that the biology that makes me brown-skinned also makes me less intelligent, less capable, better suited to menial, low-paid or unpaid labor, is not only a violent lie, it is a doggedly persistent myth on which the logic of racism relies. When I speak of the logic of racism, I'm just speaking of these twin delusions. First, that race is a biological fact, and second, that this allegedly biological fact informs a very logical hierarchy. White-skinned people at the top as owners, and brown-skinned people at the bottom as laborers at best. It took me some time, it's taken me some years to really get my cognitive fingers around the insidiousness of that lie. The tricky bit is, of course, when you look at me, you do see brown skin. And so the tendency is to say, but it's real, it's true, she's Black. And that is not to say that I don't feel overwhelming pride in my parents' Nigerian and Ghanaian culture, in the ability of brown-skinned people the world over to persevere through horrific triumph and to, in the process, generate some of the cultural forms that have shaped and continue to shape the entire world. But the lie that there is something in my biology that makes me different, fundamentally different, less human or a different kind of human than anyone who does not share my melanin content, is a violent one. And so for me, COVID-19 has been about the shutting down of borders. It has been about an intensification of fear at the individual and institutional level, but also about the confrontation with the examination of, and ultimately the rejection of the lie of racism. A friend of mine, a white man from America, asked me, how can I be less racist? He recounted a moment when he was in secondary school. He was a formidable wrestler as a teenager, and he recounted that even though he was so good at wrestling, he was always afraid to wrestle a Black man. That was the language used. I immediately pointed out that if he was in high school, so too were his Black opponents, making them adolescents, Black boys at best, and not Black men. I pointed out that the adultification of the Black child is another symptom of that underlying condition of racism. But we got to a more salient point yet, I think, when I asked him why. Why was he afraid to wrestle Black boys? Was it because of anything that had happened in his individual experience? Or was it because of a logic that he had inherited from his culture? An understanding that the body of the Black man is to be feared, controlled. I suggested to him that, compelling and helpful and brave though it is to examine individual beliefs, the real work of dismantling racism starts when we accept that the logic, the structure, is at work regardless of what we believe. I said to him that racism is a lot like electricity. It's always running. It's always running in the house, powering the house, even when the lights are on. So to examine in a moment an individual belief that is informed by the logic of racism is helpful, necessary, and commendable. Still, while we may abandon an individual belief, the electricity stays on. I said that for him, those twin delusions, that race is a biological fact, and that it informs a logical social hierarchy, a logical socioeconomic hierarchy, that electricity has been a boon to him. It has kept the lights on in his life for as long as he's been alive, and it's been a threat to others. Power source for some, threat of electrocution for others. And he got that. This moment has occasioned a deep reflection on and examination of the ways in which these logics have shaped the world in which we live, at the individual, at the institutional, and at the international level. I believe that that examination, that interrogation, is the beginning of transformation. And I am prepared, wildly optimistic though it may seem, to imagine that this transformation will be one of the hallmarks of the COVID-19 moment in history. I am prepared to imagine that as Americans, Europeans, Africans take to the streets, demanding, insisting upon, crying out for humane treatment for all humans, I believe that change not only is possible, but is proximate. When I think of imagining the world without racism, I am filled with a kind of hope on the one hand and a grief on the other. We, as a culture, as a human community, have been invited to do some deep reflection on how we view other humans and what suffering we've decided is acceptable for some humans, where it is utterly acceptable for others. To be clear, whether they are white American, Asian American, Latino American police officers shooting down Black men in the streets of America, or Nigerian police officers harassing Nigerian men on the streets of Lagos, we're looking at the same phenomenon, the devaluation of human life when that human life is housed in the body of a brown-skinned human. And this we cannot accept blindly anymore. This we know must stop. This we've always known must change. But what the COVID-19 moment has done is it has slowed us down. It has given us the opportunity, painful, necessary, vital opportunity, to look at the way so many of the world's human beings are being treated and why. This is not an easy moment and it is not easy work, but I believe it is vital and timely, long overdue, and that it can be, as I've said, transformative. And so that is where I have decided in this moment to direct my energies, my imaginative powers. If we can grasp that the fallacy of biological race, the mere absurd claim that I am fundamentally a different kind of human being, the violent dehumanizing follow on from that I am a lesser kind of human being, is not a global myth that we can continue to tell ourselves or our children. It is a story whose time has come to an end. We are ready for a new narrative based on humanity, an understanding of humanity and human dignity. And if I am foolish and overly optimistic to believe that many people are ready to abandon the old narrative in favor of the new, I am empowered, I am encouraged, I'm heartened by the numbers, by the sheer numbers of people who, in the course of this movement and moment, have demonstrated that that is exactly what they are ready for. Change. And that excites me no end. I am always, always ready to have conversations with individuals, with institutions, about this lie of race, about the follow-on effects, about the systematic, institutionalized, and pervasive structure that the lie of race has given rise to, racism. And I am excited above all of watching as impassioned human beings the globe over tear down that structure, brick by brick, making way for the world to come. It is my great hope that in my lifetime I will see the world that I can imagine. For the time being, I am prepared merely to imagine it, to imagine the world without racism.